Yeah, and but you're right though, man. It was really difficult when it came to relationships, or what I even thought a relationship was, in these different types of ways. I had the perspective of being like a 17-year-old with a girl.
Yeah.
So my mentality was much different on like what a date even is, or like what's appropriate for a date, or like all of this different type of stuff. But it was, but really, man, I think also the other part about it is, and I think that doesn't get talked about that often, is what if you come home and you start having a lot of success right away, right? And that was also very hard for me to navigate. When I came home, I walked into a gym probably about a month after being home. I started working for that gym at like $14 an hour under the table. And probably only 2 months or 3 months after that, I got really like exploded into this world of people that are really wealthy. Right? And I started training all of these people that are millionaires and are extremely wealthy and all of this. And I didn't know how to like set my prices. I didn't know how to value what it is that I do, right? I had to learn all of those things in real time, and it was really difficult. And then I was only 6 months out, I think, by the time I got my first apartment, which was like a 2-bedroom in a beautiful area in Thousand Oaks that I had never been to before, right? I had never even had a driver's license before I came home. I had never had a driver's license. I had never had a credit card. I had never had a bank account. I had never been an employee, any of these things. And so a lot of also doors were opening for me and success was coming, but it was really stressful to navigate it because I just didn't know what I was doing. And I had nothing to work off when it came to that. So that was another thing that was really difficult. And that now has been getting better with how I handle it and deal with it and thrive from it.
Yeah. I think, finding genuine people that can help you navigate through that too, because they've been out here, and it makes more sense because in your mind, you might think you have like this vision of how things are, but it's totally the opposite. Yeah. And then you realize, well, damn, I should have been charging this. I'm worth this. And people out here, even though they got money, they're still trying to exploit you. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, damn, dude, you paid that person this, but I should be getting, you know what I mean? So you got to still work around that too.
Yeah, and I also had a lot of people that weren't trying to exploit me, but that just wanted to go like, what is it that we can do for you? How can we help you? Let's do this, let's do this, let's do that. And before you knew it, they had this whole vision, and I was like spiraling of like, is that even what I want to do? Is that my vision? And I had to go through sometimes difficult conversations with people that genuinely cared for me and wanted to help, but that couldn't understand why it was that I was moving differently than what they wanted me to move when it came to them trying to help me. So that was also a very interesting thing that's a little bit different, is it's like when sometimes you have a lot of people that actually want to help you out. They're not trying to exploit you, but it's different than what you want to do, or it makes you feel uncomfortable, or you're going at a different pace. And sometimes you doing it different than the idea that they had for you starts to kind of clash. Yeah. And it creates some form of anxiety and tension and stress between, that relationship there.
Because they got their own model and vision.
They got their own model, and they just like, do this, and that, and da-da-da. And before I knew it, sometimes I was like, well, what am I don't even, is this what I want? Is it not what I want? Do I want to do this? Do I really want to be on camera doing a podcast? Do I not want to do that? Do I just want to be driving a truck, living in a small rural town? Or do I want to be in a city and pursuing a book and a movie? Or do I want to do, so I had to also kind of like figure that out internally of what is it that I'm wanting to do, or what is it that I want to pursue in my life,
Well, it kind of goes into what we were talking about off camera when you talk about having your child and then traveling and then different chapters of your life and, being able to transition. Because I tell people, like, if you can transition and sometimes shift with different opportunities, because in the pen, you next thing you know, roll it up, you're damn. True. There's no later, you know what I mean? They're like, damn, what happened, dude? I'm out, man. I don't know what's going on, they done moved you and you don't have no control. That's so my thing is like being able to up and go somewhere and create a whole new life, to me, is like, I can do it. You know what I mean? 'Cause
Yeah.
I've had no choice.
Yeah, yeah.
So, being able to go and do that. And then as you said, like yourself, you travel and, I haven't did it as a grown man. It's like driving across country. But when you go across country and you go in these other towns and some of these places look like they're stuck. Like back in the 50s, you're like,
Yeah,
man, they
yeah.
still got old traffic lights. And,
Yeah.
But it's cool, quiet.
It is. I
what
was
mean?
picturing like, man, what if I lived here, man?
Yeah,
You
like
know,
what would you be
that
doing?
like,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
So a lot of times I'm like you, like I look at like stuff on YouTube because I'm all about like some of these crazy roads and different cultures and talking to people, because when you start talking to people and you get their life experience and they talk to you and it's like you're breaking down these barriers. Because like certain people talking like, damn, dude, where are you from? I'm from originally from Sacramento. They're like, dude, you sound like, because they're like tripped out because like that's not what their perception is based on what they've seen on television.
Yeah, totally.
Of how
right.
a certain person acts.
Right.
So when they start talking to you, then it's like you don't tell them. They're like, damn, dude, you did that much time? You
Yeah.
what?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
never, what'd you do time for? And they're messed up. And it's like, well, it's not, we're not all the same. Everybody has there's some very intelligent people in prison. There's some guys, if they would have maybe had the right opportunities or direction, these guys could have been Fortune, 500 dudes, you know what I mean?
A lot of them. So many guys.
Super talented.
Yeah, talented, hardworking, creative. There's so many different things and untapped talent and potential that takes place.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like the biggest roadblock to us is ourselves.
That's right.
And I feel like one of the things is when you realize that is accountability comes into play, right? Because then you start to realize that ultimately the one that's responsible for the things that happen in your life are you. There's outside circumstances and things like that, but it's our choices that it boils down to on how we respond to things and all this different stuff.
But when you think about like the choice you made at 16,
Yeah.
like even the choice I made at 16, 17, 24, I mean, do you think that's also a reflection of your surroundings? And like, it's like it is, I mean, accountability for your action after you do it, but I think like now that people have a cell phone and they can see all these other things, you can kind of like, you're not stuck by just what you see around you.
Yeah.
So you can be like, man, well maybe I should go over here and check this out.
Yeah.
I think that's a big changing factor, which can create all these other opportunities. But like when I was young, or even before I got locked up and there wasn't no big internet, you kind of felt like it was harder to go outside your comfort zone. You know what I mean? But now it's like you can explore other things.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think like, for sure, social media and technology exposes you to so many different things, right? And it can help or it can hinder who you are. But there's also accountability that the environment that we come from, I feel like, should take. Like as an example, right? I feel like the district attorney who pushed for me to get life in prison, right? There's a certain level of accountability that adult needs to have on doing that to a 17-year-old kid and doing that to me, right? But it doesn't negate me taking responsibility for me knowing that I was wrong in the fact that I went in here with a pistol and tried to rob these people. I knew I was doing wrong at 17. I didn't feel good about it then. It's just that I thought that was going to get me to somewhere where I was trying to go.
Yeah.
But that's not right. That doesn't justify or excuse it, right? The environment that I come from, my parents, or whether or not I was, or drugs, being around it, or criminals and other gang members and things like that, all of those things influence the way that I make choices, but ultimately it boils down to the fact that I'm making the choice, right? And that can be both. I feel like when I tapped into that mentality is when I really started to move past that stage in my life where I was trying to cope with the fact that all this shit had been done to me. Like for a long time I was like, man, why'd I get life in prison? I didn't even hurt anybody physically, and here's this dude over here who killed somebody, or who's this dude over here, who's this, all that. But none of that really matters, right? Because the reality is that this is what it is. And here's where I'm at, and this is what I've been sentenced to. And for me, I needed to be able to go, yo, man, This is all fucked up, and that's fucked up, and that's fucked up, but I'm fucked up too. And I need to take responsibility for me. I need to stop worrying about whether or not everybody, what had been done to me or this or that or any of those things. And I need to just worry about me and the choices that I'm making because it's my life.
Yeah.
So I feel like when I took responsibility and when I started to be accountable for my choices, it was empowering, right? It didn't necessarily make me feel like, oh man, it didn't make me feel worse, right, when I looked at it. Instead, it was liberating because now I went, whoa, well, if it's up to me, well, that means I need to use better discernment. I need to be paying attention to the people that are in my life, to the environments that I'm in, to the music that I listen to the literature that I consume, to the way that I think, to my thoughts, all of this different stuff. And if all these things are ultimately within my control, man, that means that I can build a pretty good life no matter where I'm at. And that was like, it was a spiritual awakening for me because I went on to accomplish some pretty amazing things while I was on the inside that I'm really proud about, you know. Yeah.
What do you think is one of the biggest contributing factors when you see like this whole, like what I see like self-destruction of like young men and just lack of responsibility, accountability? I mean, what do you think are some of the biggest contributing factors now when you look at social media? Because I know, looking back, and when I used to have certain people saying, "Man, look at, you know, what are you gonna do with your life?" And I didn't have I was like, "What are you talking about?" You know, I'm looking at the guys I'm hanging out with. I didn't think nothing of it, but looking now, I'm like, "Wow, man, I didn't even see it." You know, and it's like I didn't realize all the things I had at my access that I kind of threw away because I was so focused on stupid shit.
Yeah.
You know.
And so what do I think about that? Like, what's a contributing factor to that?
Contributing factor, I mean, for one of the main things I see is lack of male role models, because it's like you don't, if a lot of the role models, if I got the ones I met on inside, if I would have had that on the street, and maybe had somebody getting in my ear that could pierce through the ego, I would have been like, you know, I would have changed, I would have maybe made a different choice, went right instead of left. You know, maybe, you know, did this instead of that. You know, it's, you know, and I'm not making excuses. All I'm saying is that, like, when I try to somehow ration with a younger version of myself, I think about like what could have impacted that younger version of myself.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different factors. You know, when I look around after coming home, and I see a lot of the influence of social media. I see the homeless population is insane, right? Drug abuse is at an all-time high. Pharmaceutical abuse is at an all-time high. Mental illness is at an all-time high. I think social media plays a big part in it. I think a lack of empathy from the world around people is a huge part in that. What I mean by that is like, take my situation. I was 17 years old and I'm sitting in a courtroom, and I'm in a courtroom around all these adults, and all these adults are all arguing with each other over what's right or wrong of what should be happening to me, right? And almost all of them are mad at me, right? They're angry with me, and they're angry with my actions and all of that. But you didn't have too many people in a place of authority that actually like empathized with me. You didn't have the district attorney be an adult and come up to the kid and understand that you can be angry and still empathize with somebody, and that the empathy is what's going to ultimately impact me, right? The anger is I'm going to receive the anger. Let me see if I can describe this right.
You know what I look at
Let me describe, yeah.
When I seen that, based on what you said about the prosecutor, the reason they were mad at you, from my perspective, just from outside looking in, and just like how, when we talk about culture, is that they said, how did white America fail? Because you weren't supposed to buy into that. See, there's certain things in black culture that aren't supposed to cross over, even though they let black culture destroy itself. But they're like, why did you buy into that failure? Why did you buy into that whole lifestyle, and what appealed? And they want to figure out, so by you telling them, they can kind of go through and figure out, okay, well, damn, you know, I want to make sure we don't see more of this coming into our courtroom. That's what I see when I see that, because as far as black culture, it's so It's like so stupid. Like black culture is the only culture where even when shit is being done and you know it's wrong, they don't call it out because they still want to be able to relate somehow to black culture. And black culture has nothing to do with keeping it real. That's the only culture. Keep it real. Oh, I still know, I'm still got some hood. I grew up over here. Who cares? I've never heard any rich white billionaires or millionaires talking about, I'm gonna keep it hillbilly. I'm gonna keep it white, you know what I mean?
That's not true because if you think about all the country artists, right? All of them want to talk about how they came from a dirt road with a pickup truck.
But they're not doing the violence. See, country.
That's true.
I listen to more country music than I do hip hop now.
Yeah.
But they're not promoting the generation.
Yeah.
They told good stories. Oh man, my daddy grew up there, learned how to shoot this. My mom. They have family issues and stuff, but it's not the level of destruction of what we see in the black culture.
No, and I'm not saying that. I'm saying more along the lines of when there's people that are being inauthentic is what I'm saying, right? Like what you're talking about is how in the black culture there's this need to have this link back to the hood, right? And not ever leave the hood or for many have never come from the hood.
Or call it out.
Right? Or call it out in that type of way. There's a lot of guys I feel like call it out, you just gotta, it's just not as prevalent, right? But I guess what I was saying more along the lines is what I feel contributes to all of it, right? And when I was saying about a lack of empathy is I feel like what people look for are differences over similarities, right? And do you understand what I'm saying by that?
So you're saying that like the prosecutor was looking for more differences and similarities in your case, and that's why they
not
didn't
in my
empathize
case, in me.
In you.
In me, they were looking at differences. They were looking at me hanging out with a black crowd. They were looking at me in this. They were looking at me as somebody that doesn't even come from their world. Who are you? What do you think? How do you even think this way, right? And they're offended by all of it. And instead, right, that's differences. But instead of looking at similarities like, yo, I got a 17-year-old at home and they both like have the same build, right? Or my 17-year-old thinks that is all arrogant and thinks that he's got it all figured out too. Or like, man, you know what? Who are these kids? Who is this kid's parents? This kid's got to have parents, right? Who are they? Why don't I talk to them, right? And get a better understanding of who this kid is. You don't have these people trying to dive further into seeing the similarity over the difference, right? And that's where the lack of empathy comes in. And when a person has a lack of empathy, then they can do cruel things to people, right? And when cruel things take place, it becomes this cycle, right? Because cruelty begets hurt, and then hurt begets cruelty, and it just continues to go.
But it perpetuates.
Yeah, it perpetuates. So when I'm thinking of what contributes to so much of the destruction, right, in society, or these young men that are coming into institutions and stuff like that, is that so much of us, our whole life, right, are receiving from others how we're so different, right? Not how we're all so similar. And I remember in CGA, I was taking this group in there called Criminal Gang Members Anonymous, right? And in there, one of the key factors is similarities over differences. And what that means is that when I'm sitting down next to Herc, let's say I was a skinhead, right? And I'm sitting down next to Herc, who's a dark-skinned black man, right? And all these different things. Instead of me seeing all these things that are different about this person, I see all the things that are the same about this person. Maybe you're going to school just like I'm going to school. Maybe you like country music just like I country music, right? Or whatever it is. And what that does is that allows me to be able to be more empathetic to who you are because I can see myself in you, which means that I won't have the same level of hate towards you, right? I think it goes into even what you're talking about with male role models. When you're talking about a lack of male role models, right? The lack of it is because a lot of these guys that are having kids that then don't follow through, or strangers. As an example, if I'm around a 15-year-old right now, right? And this 15-year-old is in my gym, right? This 15-year-old's in my gym and he's causing problems in some type of way. A lot of people, they look the other way. That's somebody else's problem, right? Or, man, I don't know where that kid comes from or what that kid's going through or any of that. I don't give a fuck. All I know is that this person's causing a disruption. The difference behind somebody who sees the similarity is that they're going to get involved, right? And they're going to try to change the situation in some type of way.